I call to order the regular meeting of the Anchorage Assembly for September 11th, 2012. Madam Clerk, would you do the roll call?
Ms. Drummond.
I am here.
Mr. Trainey.
I'm here.
Mr. Honeman.
Here.
Ms. Elvi Gray-Jackson.
Honored to be here.
Mr. Hall.
I'm here.
Ms. Johnston. Here. Mr. Starr.
Here.
Mr. Trombley.
Here.
Ms. Ossiander. Mr. Flynn. Mr. Birch.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Birch, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Mr. Mayor, do you have a report for us this evening?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. First and foremost, as we say the pledge, of course, we remember that today, 9/11, 11 years ago, is when the attacks on the Pentagon, the World Trade Center, and Flight 93 occurred. And so we remember this day with gratitude to those first servers that rushed into the fray that day, and with remembrances and heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of those who did lose their lives that day. And a thank you, of course, to our men and women in the armed services who are continuing to fight the battle for all of us. So today's a day that we all take a moment and remember. So as you know, Mr. Chairman, after the windstorm last week, one of the casualties was the Veterans Flagpole at the Park Strip. And Mr. Chairman and I are going to go visit the wood and see if it cannot be somehow refashioned into maybe items like furniture or other things that could be sold on behalf of veterans organizations, because it is a fairly significant spar of Sitka spruce, and it's being housed now at our horticulture department up there in Russian Jack. And so the chair's agreed to go, since he knows more about wood than any of us, to see if maybe there's some possibility to do something fairly unique with it, and maybe turn it into something significant, or many things of significance. Power, as I understand it, is back on to virtually all residents. You know, I know that there was certainly many challenges out there with so many trees on so many lines, and I think everybody agrees the communication could be improved. But when you think about it, we essentially had a hurricane with no injuries, loss of life, no significant major building damage, although certainly lots of smaller ones, and all restored in less than a week. And so when you really think about it, a good job by all, except, again, I think communication certainly needs to be improved so the residents have an easier time knowing, you know, just what the status is of power in their area, and just any other information they might need. Had the pleasure this week, a weekend of helping open the Korean Community Center in your district, Mr. Chairman, and in Ms. Drummond's district, right there on Jewel Lake Road. The Korean community now has a new center to help spread their education and culture about the Korean community. And then yesterday, the State Treasurers Conference convened in Anchorage. 32 different states have sent their state treasurer here, along with staff and families, and it's a fairly significant convention, and it was just absolutely beautiful yesterday. So I know they're going to go back to their various states and several countries and spread the good word about what a great place Anchorage is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to, in conjunction with the Mayor's mention of 911, ask that we all stand for a moment of silence in remembrance of those that lost their lives. Thank you. A couple of heads up in regards to our agenda this evening. We do have the sidewalk ordinance on the agenda. That was an error on our part. Mr. Trainey will be moving that be continued to our next meeting for public testimony. Also, Title 21, once again, is on our agenda, and a heads up on that one, Ms. Drummond will be making a motion to continue that as well to a later date. So if you're here on either of those two items, they will be continued. With that, I would like to move into committee reports, beginning with Mr. Birch.
I have no committee reports, but I did want to commend those that have been working to respond to the wind damage. We had a substantial impact in our area in South Anchorage, and with power out for 4 or 5 days in many cases, and I think the response was great. And I do agree with the mayor's assessment in that the utility that services many of our homes, Chugiak Electric Association, I understand that they are looking to improve communications, whether it's social media or whatever. But I think that was one area that was sorely lacking, was the communication side. So with that, no other committee reports. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Birch. Mr. Flynn.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ossiander.
Title 21 Committee will be meeting this Thursday from 9:30 to 12:30. Is that right? That's right. At the Permit Center on Elmore. We are going to be finishing, hopefully, Chapters 4 and 5 and starting Chapter 6.
Thank you, Ms. Ossiander. Mr. Starr.
I just had a general question on the follow-up for the windstorm communications. Mr. Vikalis, does the Warren system that we have any sort of public channel for the public to dial into with their radios, the family channel radios or the Motorola's that commonly are owned? My challenge is that when you call the power company and they say, go to the website and check such and such, your power's off, your computer's not working in most cases, and cell phones are down. So the practical sense on the money we've spent for a Warren, is there any public use to that radio network that we could perhaps look at?
Not A1 itself. However, there is a public broadcasting channel that on emergencies and disasters that can be used for communication, but that's assuming that folks have radios with batteries at home to communicate with.
And it's always a general question. Most of the phones seem to be working that I had reports. I wasn't actually in town for this one, but the person for assistance, 911 still works as well, but sort of the general update of the city's services, when are they going to get to my street or something like that, who should they call?
Well, what we relied upon, during this one was each one of the two utilities, because that was the primary disturbance. But I think, and normally if it was a bona fide disaster, we'd stand up a joint information center, and the EOC would be operational 24 hours, fully staffed, and that would be the source of communicating information. Now, the 211 lines were open, and the 211, of course, gives out information on a daily basis to questions and things that people have. And there was an awful lot of folks that called into 211 to find out what was going on. We were feeding 211 the information as we were getting it. We were in constant contact with the two utilities to see exactly where and what they were doing. But some of the issues, as the mayor pointed out, was they were stretched very, very thin, and the order of magnitude was pretty substantial. And until they got to each and every one of these different locations, it was, a hit and miss as to how long it was going to be. So we did get frequent updates, but the updates were not necessarily in line with what actually was occurring.
I agree. It wasn't a quiz. I was trying to get education, partly on the record. The 211 system, I think, is great. If the Warren, there's a lot of ham radio users and folks that are out there, and maybe just revisit some of the ways that we say this wasn't a serious one, but it was serious to a lot of folks.
Sure.
And especially if something like this had happened in winter. So I appreciative of that. My emails didn't light up with overly. There are, as Ms. Ossiander is saying, there was 3 utilities involved, and MTA seemed to do their part. MEA rather,
yeah.
with our groups out here in Eagle River 2s. Mr. Chairman, for a committee report, it's basically just a primer that, as you and I spoke, we'll be working on the schedule. We should have something out to the Assembly on the budget dialogues and the public hearings and the opportunity for work sessions. So I would hope the Assembly looks at that. I will note a caution that October is going to be busy. as with Ms. Gray Jackson suggested, the committees of the whole for our Budget and Finance Committee meeting, try to do as much work as we can inside of that, with the idea that we pass this budget before Thanksgiving would be our sort of our goal this year. So, Mr. Mayor and the staff there, Lucinda, thank you for getting the 120-day summary of information to us on revenues and the requirements for that. So if you guys haven't seen the 120-day administration primer, you should probably do that and start educating yourself. But expect an email from myself and the chairman on what we anticipate to lay out for that, and any special meetings required. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Mr. Trombley, do you have a committee report?
No report.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnston?
Yes, I might give a little bit longer one this time because I had an assembly member say that I don't say much as far as the Enterprise Committee. And so the Enterprise Committee and myself were able to have two meetings this last 2 weeks. One was with Solid Waste Services, and the other I went with Mr. Trombley and Mr. Posey over to Beluga and took a tour of our assets there, and also the Chugiak electric facility, which was a very interesting tour. All I can say is we're very lucky we have a new facility coming on this fall, because we have a facility out there that is really held together by duct tape and bale of twine. And so I can't wait for the official start of our new facility, and I hope that is soon, within the next month or so. Just for anyone's information, the Enterprise Committee is responsible to two very important aspects of our enterprise groups, which is Solid Waste Services, the Port, MLNP, and AWW. We have to look at the impact on our ratepayers, and we have to overview the management of our assets. And with RCA, with MLNP and AWW, we have an assistance in setting the rates, but it does not completely we still have our responsibility as far as the ratepayers. And the way we have been approaching that is by looking at the financials, because that's how the rates are set by RCA, and particularly the expenses, because that's really all we have control over. And I really appreciate working with all of the entities as far as getting help in reviewing and cutting our expenses. And hopefully we'll see some long-term effect of this. As far as Beluga, I was reminded as we were touring the fields over there how much we owe as a community to Brian Davies. He was a member of our community that passed away this summer, and he was very much responsible for us becoming partners in the gas fields over there. And it's because of him, we have an asset. And this asset's even a little bit more different than just our regular utility asset. And we have to invest in that asset, and we get revenues from that asset. So I just for everybody, you know, we get these dividends from MLNP, and it's really nice, but it's not something that the general manager and the board do out of the kindness of their heart. It's something that they really are responsible for in managing this assets. And the dividends are something that it's not that we have grown to expect them, but it's something that we really do in some respects expect to get every year, because it is an asset and it's a paying asset. And so this is just some of the things that we look at as far as the Enterprise Committee.
Ms. Ossiander.
When will we be able to get the report from on the port that the Corps of Engineers is preparing? Do you know about that?
I have been in touch with our municipal manager, and he is working diligently on this. We have to work with MARAD as far as who's on first and how we get it.
Let us know when you know, please.
Oh, I sure will.
I would just gently call to the members' attention. I did ask a question related to that, and the port responded that they expect to brief and provide copies of the 100% draft final summary report to the Geographic, or sort of to the Geotechnical Advisory Commission on or about October 16. So I think we can assume that's sort of the general time frame we're looking at here.
Okay. Sure took longer
Mr.
than I
Chair.
thought it was going to.
I have a question of the Chair of the Enterprise Committee.
Yes, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, Ms. Johnston. You talked about the ratepayers and covering rates. It's my understanding that the expense of the cleanup after the windstorm is going to be divided among the ratepayers, and the ratepayers will have to cover the expense of cleanup. Have you had any conversations with the utilities about that?
No, I haven't. At this point, I think they're still in triage, and I think it's a good, we will be having a discussion, but after the cleanup.
Okay. Do you know anything about perhaps if an emergency had been actually declared and we could have gotten some help with the cleanup costs, or is this going to be entirely up to the ratepayers at this point?
You can answer that, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like. Go ahead, George.
Yes. To my knowledge, that decision has not been made, but it is a possibility.
Yes,
Yeah.
Through the chair, whenever a situation or event like this occurs, and depending on the order of magnitude, you do have an option of basically declaring a state of emergency. In technical terms, you have approximately 14 days in which to make that declaration. And the reason for the 14 days is it takes at least that amount of time for the initial surveys and everything else to accumulate all of the data that's necessary in order to get the declaration, number one, approved by the mayor, and then number two, and more importantly, it's not just that the mayor declares it, it has to be basically verified by the state. And they have a system in which they do that. If, in fact, they do verify the state, the emergency declaration, and they look at the cost factors that we have provided as well as all the other things that are evaluated, not just costs, then if they do declare, then we do get the opportunity for some type of relief monies from the state. If the order of magnitude is of such a nature that it warrants, then the state could also go to the federal government and also so declare on behalf of the state. If that happens, then that opens up monies from FEMA. At this point, we're continually going through and doing the surveys, getting all the data from not only businesses, the utilities certainly, but also expenses that were incurred by the local government, as well as hardships and monies and other things that were incurred by the private owners of homes. And this is being done via survey through the internet and also verbal communications. Once that's done, it will go forward if the mayor determines, based on recommendations, that the threshold probably has been met.
Thank you, Mr. Municipal Manager. That was, I'm glad to hear that it is being considered and that it might yet happen. I didn't know you could do that post-event. Mr. Chair, would this be an appropriate time to ask a couple of questions about the windstorm, or should I wait until my turn comes? I was sending signals when Mr. Mayor was making his report, but I...
No, it would be appropriate now, Ms. Drummond.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the Veterans Flagpole, Mr. Mayor, it was actually one of the first casualties. I believe it went down before midnight on Tuesday. How was the flagpole moved?
Well, it was, to move it, it was cut into sections ranging in size from 6 feet in length to 18 inches in length. And then, George, I don't know whose truck particularly, Park and Rec, then took charge of the moving.
So even though there was at least 70 feet of the flagpole unbent and unharmed, it was still cut into 6-foot sections? Is this what I understand?
Yeah, in order to move it without, finding some incredibly long low buoy, in a short-term basis. And given the condition, particularly of the base of it, I think the veterans groups we've talked to, Tim Benatendi and others, they're looking at replacing it with a metal pole so that, much more sturdy, much more durable in the future. So I think that's probably a better course.
Okay, I think it's kind of a shame that it was cut up in short pieces. If I had been in the position of assessing that thing, I think I would have offered it to the Alaska Native Heritage Center, perhaps for totem carving. I'm sure there are Alaska Native veterans who would have been delighted to have that opportunity. And I'm glad to hear there are plans for replacing it. And do you know what happened to the globe at the top?
Yeah, Park and Rec has that as well.
They also have that. And how about the flag?
I don't know about the flag, but the plaques that were there are in our custody as well. The flag, George, do you know? Yeah, I don't know about the flag.
That's right. One of those plaques was given to me by the people at the flag pole that night, and I did return it to the Parks Department last week.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and in addition, regarding communications, I learned everything I needed to know that night and the following power outage on Facebook. I think this municipality needs to have way more of a presence on Facebook. The Daily News website was down. All kinds of stuff was not happening, but Facebook was amazing. What I learned that the wireless towers and the cell phone towers most have generators, so communications was uninterrupted. And it was pretty remarkable. The online community really hung together and let people know what was going on. And I highly recommend you get to know what Facebook is capable of doing. Thank you.
Mr. Honeman.
Along that line, I was just asking real quick. Do we have an idea when we'll be able to get a list of how much damage was done to municipal properties and liabilities, such as the parks? And we have some trees that have gone from in the walk paths to parks and on the parklands, into private property and damage to fences and homes and such. Is there any estimate on when we'll have, for instance, ML&P, just to name one, that any infrastructure damage and how much that costs? We're gathering all the data this week, and we're compiling it, and there's a special format that we have to put it in. And our deadline, of course, to get it to the state is Wednesday.
Right. So,
a week from tomorrow.
Right. Well, thank you. And I was one of those that was trying to get updates and doing the best I can, and it was frustrating for me to try to help constituent information as well, and also did without power until about midnight Saturday, early Sunday morning. But my hat's off to the crews that responded en masse. There were fewer of them than there were trees and town lines and such, so I'll give them the credit for the response in the middle of the night and high winds and rain and sometime. But just the communication, I think we all agree, much better abilities to respond as an entity, as a government. Thank you.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a committee report, but I live alone, and when the lights go out, it's pretty darn intimidating, even for me. And this year, I've lived in Anchorage for 30 years, and my lights were out for 30 hours, and I looked at it as a gift. And it was a gift because it taught me that I need to be better prepared. And with that said, I just want to take a moment and start with thanking our general manager, Mr. Posey, for his great leadership, frankly. And then I want to thank all the employees that work for him, that were out there trying to turn the lights back on for all of us in the midst of dangers, because I wouldn't want to be on a light pole trying to fix anybody's light at any cost. So, Mr. Posey, thank you to you and your staff, because I am forever grateful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Gray Jackson. Mr. Honeman.
Yeah, just add right on the sentiments, Ms. Gray Jackson and Mr. Posey, and also to Chugiak. I know they've acknowledged communications needed improvements, but notwithstanding that, it was a pretty big wallop. I think the mayor was spot on when he said we had a hurricane, and we're just fortunate we didn't have loss of life in this one. I'm shudder to think that it might have happened in the middle of the winter. Officially, I know it was 34 degrees. One morning I woke up and still didn't have power. And in saying that, I'm a little better prepared than my colleague here. I had actually a generator and a transfer switch that I put in before the clocks went to zero in the millennium. So I had that done in the fall of '99. It was the first opportunity to use it for any duration. And I was grateful for doing that. And I was able to use extra extension cords and power some neighbors as well, as some of my neighbors did the same. So this was largely a good test for us to get prepared, and I agree with Ms. Gray Jackson. Moving to committee report, Public Safety Committee will meet tomorrow at noon here at the Lusac Library. We do have a fairly full agenda, and I know that Ms. Johnston last meeting had asked that we schedule folks from BFW out on, I believe, over off the Old Seward, and they're folks have been aware and they should be here, as well as some reports from the departments. I don't know, the chiefs, hope you got your agendas today and someone available. Had some questions, reference equipment and status and stuff. And that should be it. Tomorrow noon here.
Thank you, Mr. Horniman. Mr. Trainee.
Mr. Michaelis, just a quick question in conjunction with this windstorm. Can you send somebody to look at Wickersham Park where the creek goes under Diamond Drive? We lost 8 trees there, and they're now in the street because my neighbors don't have a chipper. So does the city have a chipper that can go through the streets and just grind these things up? Because they left the tree stumps that fell in the street. It would be good if we could get rid of them because they don't have the ability to do that. But it was a good exercise to have all my neighbors out there cutting trees down. We spent the better part of half a day chainsawing like crazy. It was a fun exercise. And there was no loss of life, and I appreciate the response of the city and the power utilities. It is what it is. It's a windstorm. You just have to learn to live with it. Okay. If you'd take care of that, I'd appreciate it, Mr. Michaelis. I've got pictures of it, and there's another problem there where the creek crosses Wickersham Park. There's about 4 trees that fell over, so if the kids decide they want to float Campbell Creek down, they'll be taken out because it's laying about 12 inches above the water. A bunch of them.
If I may, through the chair, we have both Chester Creek and Campbell Creek. In certain areas, we have major trees down in the creek. We're in there trying to basically cut them up and relieve the pressure. If we have any significant rains, we do have the danger of flooding, especially where we have a dense populated area around those creeks. In addition to that, a concern that we have right now is that when it starts freezing up, if we don't get the majority of those out of there, then we'll have a major glaciation problem, and that would cause flooding as well. We are dealing with it, and we do have crews dealing with it, but the order of magnitude is pretty substantial.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it. I figured you guys were. It's just that it's near my house, down the street a ways, and I was talking to my wife, and she says, well, it's not a problem because kids aren't floating the creek. The kids will float the creek until there's snow on the creek. So I don't really want them to get taken out by hitting a tree. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Ms. Gray-Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to talk about something that I just forgot. But anyway, it's a question to Ms. Mahoney. I'm just wondering if you can let me know what the status is of my request for the efficiencies and savings that resulted from repealing the authorities for both AWW and MLMP. It's been like, I think, a couple of months since I asked for it. But my conversation with you has not quite been that long. Can you let me know when we can expect something, all of us? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through the chair, that request was made when I wasn't here, and I was informed of it, and I apologize for any delays. Been quite busy, but I commit that I will get that to you prior to the next assembly meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Mahoney.
Ms. Drummond.
Oh, I don't have a report, Mr. Chair, but I got all my questions answered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Drummond. Prior to dealing with the agenda, we've got some Boy Scouts in the back. Could you please come up and introduce yourself and tell us what troop you're with? That would be all 3 of you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Mosiah Jessup, and the trooper in is 203. And yeah.
Okay.
My name is Prince Jessup, and I'm troop 203. Yeah.
My name is Alma Jessup. I'm part of Troop 203, and we're here because a merit badge we have to do, and it's required to be here at some kind of town council meeting.
Okay. Just a moment. Mr. Horniman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wondering, gentlemen, apparently you're all related, and that's just going out on a limb here. The other thing is Troop 203. What part of town is that? Who's your sponsoring organization?
I'm sorry?
What sponsoring organization? Is it a school or?
It's a church.
Excuse me?
Church.
Which one? Where at?
LDS. We're an LDS church.
Where do you meet, I guess?
We meet on Arctic.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to the assembly meeting. It's, hopefully it's exciting for you and you get some information out to take back to your rest of your troop.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, we've got an addendum to the agenda. I'd take a motion to incorporate.
So moved. Second.
Okay. Seeing no objection, that passes unanimously. I will read into the minutes the addendum to the consent agenda under 9D, item 14, AM 256, sole source purchase with NC Machinery Company to rebuild a Caterpillar D9R dozer for the municipality of Anchorage Solid Waste Services in the amount of $598,645.24. And item 9D15, AM 527, change order number 15 to purchase order number 281143 with Fosselman and Associates CPAs Incorporated to provide ambulance and fire inspection billing and collection services for the municipality of Anchorage Fire Department in the amount of $297,000. That completes the addendum. There are no laid on the table, so I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any items to be pulled? Mr. Birch.
No items, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Flynn.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Ms. Ossiander.
9 Delta 10.
Mr. Starr.
No items.
Ms. Johnston.
9 Delta 13 to postpone it to 9:25, 9E1, and 9F1 for conflict.
Thank you. Mr. TROMBLEY.
No items.
Ms. Gray-Jackson.
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Honeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 9 Alpha 1 for reading and presentation.
Mr. Trainey.
96, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Drummond.
No items, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, what I am showing items that have been pulled is 9A1, D6, D10, D13, and item under E1 and under F, I'm not sure what, F1. Okay. That's the items I show that have been pulled. We get them? Okay. We have before us then approval of the consent agenda, less the items that have been pulled. Any objections? Seeing, hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. And we now have before us 9A1, which is a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing September as Hunger Action Month in Anchorage.
Move to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Any objection? Seeing, hearing none, that item is approved. Ms. Gray-Jackson is presenting, and Mr. Horneman is reading.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Anchorage Assembly Resolution 2012-199, a resolution of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly recognizing September as Hunger Action Month in Anchorage. Whereas hunger statistics in Alaska are a sobering reminder of the scope of the problem in our communities. And whereas 46% of hungry Alaskans have at least one family member who is employed, and whereas 45% of food bank clients choose between paying for food and paying for rent or mortgage, and whereas 46% of clients choose between paying for food and paying for transportation, and whereas 43% of clients choose between paying for food or paying for utilities or heating fuel, and whereas the sluggish national economy and high unemployment add additional burden to hungry families, and whereas September is designated as Hunger Action Month, all across the United States. And whereas the Food Bank of Alaska and its statewide anti-hunger partners joined Feeding America and the national network of more than 200 food banks in hosting a series of events aimed at fighting hunger in America. And whereas with 105,000 Alaskans struggling with food insecurity, the Food Bank of Alaska is asking everyone in the Great Land to take action against hunger all month long. And whereas whether by advocating, raising awareness, making donations, or volunteering, all citizens have the chance to make a difference during Hunger Action Month. Now, therefore, the Anchorage Municipal Assembly resolves that September is officially recognized as Hunger Action Month in Anchorage, and all citizens are encouraged to get involved with anti-hunger activities. Passed and approved by the Anchorage Assembly this 11th day of September 2012.
I'm just going to hold it. I'd briefly just like to extend our thanks to the Assembly Chairman Hall, Member Gray Jackson, for your support and for providing this resolution. I'm standing here with leaders from Food Bank, Catholic Social Services, the Alaska Food Coalition, and New Hope on the Last Frontier. The storm, as you can tell, touched our community a number of ways, and it also touched folks who were very vulnerable when it came to food. So it's a reminder, hopefully for everyone, that this is an issue that's not going away, and it's something that we all need to be vested in. And your support is very important because it speaks very loudly to the community that you, the Assembly, also agree that this is something we need to do something about. Our Executive Director is here, Susanna Morgan, and one of the things that she always says, if hunger was an epidemic, if this was an epidemic, we would have all the resources the state could muster. And we know right now we have 105,000 people. 105,000 people, and that's reported numbers, that are dealing with where their next meal is going to come on a daily basis. So we want to just say thank you, and also bring to your attention that this week we have an opportunity to do something about it. I have to excuse my appearance. I was at the port today. Thanks to all the folks at the port and the municipality, we collected almost 14,000 pounds of food and funds. So that was a real good way to get this week started. But we have an even bigger food drive on Friday, the day of caring, in the Sears Mall. So we'll hope that you folks will be there to support us and help us fill our shelves so we can work to do something about this. Thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we thank you for your support once again this year for Hunger Action Month. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got a question, but may I have you state your name for the record?
Jim McKenzie, Food Bank of Alaska.
Thank you. Mr. Horniman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. McKenzie, Ms. Morgan. I know myself I've given time in my vehicle, my large moving truck, to move food pallets from the food bank facility to a number of churches in town. So I encourage all citizens who have a few moments to go help sort the food, get them distributed, and if you can work at one of the food pantries or shelters around town or one of the churches that host these, as you know, as you said, this recent windstorm knocked out power to a lot of people, and several folks are more vulnerable now than they were before the windstorm, and not all of them have the means to replace all that. So get involved and chip in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
Very much.
We now have before us item 9D6, AM 511, proprietary purchase with the...
Approve. Second.
See, this is before us. Mr. Horniman?
Actually, it's me.
Oh, Mr. Trini.
Chief, come forward for a minute, please. I'm going to talk to the Chief on getting enough tasers for our police force. This is just a part of what we need. Chief, you've done the figures on it. How much more do we need to fully arm the staff that we have in the police force so they have a choice if less lethal works in that situation? That's not saying it works every time, but it's an option. It's about $300,000 more we need.
Mr. Trainee, through the chair, Mr. Trainee, the command structure got together here recently, and we decided that 188 tasers might be the best number for the APD right now. That represents 60 new units. But the problem is the old ones are off warranty and retiring, so eventually
The old ones aren't even supported anymore, as I understand it.
Correct. They're off warranty. They're not supported as they break. They have to be replaced with the new X2. So if we're going to completely revamp and increase the fleet, the total price tag would be someplace between, depending on how long the trade-in value is, the total price tag would be someplace between $294,700 and $318,500. But the purchase that you're looking at tonight will reduce that by $50,000. So we've made some adjustments there, and I have that material for you now.
Let me have that when we're done, if you would, Chief.
Sure.
It's just that when you take a look at the potential for a lawsuit because of the loss of a life, it's easier to use less lethal force if that's the right situation for that officer to determine when they're faced with it. And none of us get faced with it, but the policemen that are out there, and I want to give them an option, if at all possible, to use some other means to stop the person. So thank you, Chief.
Mr. Starr.
Chief, we have that forfeiture fund that we talk about from time to time, forfeiture funds that go into the police budget. Is the funds available in that something that we could pull out, or as you have discretion to spend out of that funds, is there something we can do to expedite that request?
Yes, in fact, we use forfeiture funds to increase our taser purchases already. That's one of the ways we've been funding the expansion of the program over the years.
There's over $1 million in that fund now. It progressively grows throughout, and so when do you use discretion to go ahead and just buy outright with that money? I mean, you just said you already do it. Why wouldn't you just replenish the fleet of tasers now?
Well, to be honest with you, that there's been a lot of suggestions for how to use that money as we go into the budget year, and we're sort of waiting to see. I don't want to spend that money 3 times over in my mind, so we're going to wait and see how the dust settles, but certainly we can buy tasers out of that money.
Yeah, I understand. I know that there are those budgetary restrictions. We've used them for various creative ways in the past, and I thought this one would be a direct. It seems to be the language is clear for equipment support related to police safety and public safety.
It's also true that we didn't come up with this new number of tasers until just recently. It's come about in part because of the 2 shootings we've had. A lot of people are asking questions about how many we ought to have. Mr. Traney asked that question, so we just had an internal debate in the last 2-3 weeks about this. So the number is fresh with us as well. But we certainly could use asset forfeiture money for those purchases to expand it. That's an easy one.
I had a constituent call me, Chief, earlier in the week, and he talked to me that the police department's equipped with automatic weapons such as M16s. Do we carry such a firepower in mass?
We have an urban rifle program, and there are certain officers, and I don't know the exact number, but it's not a majority. It's a minority of them who carry the M4, which is a semi-automatic short version of the M16.
I guess
and there are fully automatic versions on SWAT.
I understand, and I didn't mean you to disclose the police assets necessarily. He, I guess, was responding to a radio discussion or radio report on talk radio that said we may own over 200 of those type of weapons. Do you think that's true?
I don't think we do not have 200 officers in the urban rifle program.
Okay.
We did buy a whole bunch of them, or are in the process of buying a bunch of them with state grant money. Right now, all those rifles are owned privately by the officers themselves. They apply for the program, they purchase their own equipment. It has to be our specs. They have to go through our training. But we're going to be increasing the fleet of rifles somewhat, and maybe replacing the personally owned ones with municipally owned equipment. Sergeant Scherer, do you remember off the top of your hand how many people we have in the patrol rifle program? Something in my mind says it's on the order of 40 or 50, but don't quote me on that.
Yeah, great. I told the constituent I'd ask that. It's never a judgment as to what you feel is the safety requirements of your officers by my questioning. So sort of do what you got to do in your opinion of a professional law enforcement officer. You'll get my support. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. I was going to echo the chief. Not only is most of the long rifle, assault rifles, long guns, I guess you'd say, personally owned, but when I first hired on, going back, the same practice was with shotguns, believe it or not. I remember purchasing my own. They didn't have enough to issue to everybody, so I purchased my own at the time and went through the course. So it's more or less a standard as it goes in, and as we progress, perhaps like the taser, started out with, I think, SWAT and then supervisors, and now it's developed to perhaps going into more down the road. So.
Please vote. Mr. TROMBLEY? That carries unanimously. We now have before us item 9D10, AM 515, change order number 1 to purchase order number 20101028 with Cook Inlet Tribal Council to provide coordinated transportation services for the municipality of Anchorage Public Transportation Department in the amount of $38,016. This item is before us.
Second.
Okay.
The reason I pulled this was to share some information with the body. As I think most of you know, I've been working on taxi issues for a while now. And in the course of that, I keep running into people who have stories about their frustrations with public transportation in this town. And one of those stories concerns Cook Inlet Tribal. This particular grant I think absolutely deserves support. It's a competitive grant that helps Cook Inlet provide transportation services for their needy clients. However, this is not the ideal way they would like to go. What they would like to do is to have several vans and charge a sliding scale so that their clients would become empowered to basically control their own destinies. As they get more and more self-sufficient, they could pay more, and it would, in their mind, enable the program to be self-sustaining in the future. The way it's working right now, they're having to pay a lot of this cost. We're paying some here through the grant, but a lot of it comes out of Cook Inlet Tribal. Well, Cook Inlet went to our Transportation Commission and said they wanted to have a vehicle for hire permit to do just that, and they were refused. The reason they were refused, according to their general counsel, is that the Transportation Commission said that they didn't believe there was need, and they didn't like the fact that the vehicles would be charging fees, and those fees should go to taxi cabs instead. So I seized the day when I saw this here and thought, I've got to share some stories. But Cook Inlet is very interested in going with a model that they've experienced with some success with the Sean Luke program of getting their clients to move towards self-sufficiency and autonomy. And this isn't ideal. It's needed, though. So I'm working on it if anybody's interested.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
I just thought I should mention that I might have a conflict. I do some work for Cook Inlet Tribal Council. I would not receive any funds from this contract, and actually I do more with their education division, but I thought I should mention it.
I'm going to make the ruling that you do not have a conflict, so you're going to be obligated to vote, which we're going to do now. Mr. Trombley. That motion carries unanimously. We now have Mr. Horniman.
No, I'm sorry. I pushed it the last minute wrong.
Okay, no problem. We have now before us 9D13, AM number 518, amendment number 3 to vendor contract number 25 HLB 015 to provide for the continuation of a lease for the Bering Street Fleet Maintenance Facility with JLS Properties LLC for the municipality of Anchorage.
Move to postpone to our September 25th meeting.
Second.
Any objection? Seeing no objection, that is approved for postponing, continuing. We have now before us 9E1, AIM 80, Board of Equalization 2012 report. Ms. Johnston.
Move to accept with a great deal of thanks.
And a second, with also thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Burke, would you like to join us?
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'll try to just hold it. As you know, the municipal code requires that the Board of Equalization give you an annual report on our activities for the past year. This is required by the municipal code as well as state statutes. You're also aware of the fact that we act on your behalf. You're actually the Board of Equalization, but very wisely delegated it to a group of volunteers. This year, we had 551 real property assessments appealed. This is a decrease of 12% over last year. And I would like, with your indulgence, to sort of compare this to where we were 9 years ago. 9 years ago, we had almost 500 appeals before us. Now, we were hearing 2001, 2, 3, and 4, so that was an anomaly. But taking out all of those prior years, this is still a remarkable reduction in the number of appeals that are filed to the assessed valuations. Now, again, as has been in the past, most of these appeals are settled at what we call the assessor's front desk, where people, after receiving their green card, can go in and talk to the appraisers if there are disputes over the size of the property, any details, and 80% of those are resolved. And I view that is they don't have to agree to what the assessor or the appraiser says, because they can come to us for a hearing. So they must be satisfied or resigned, or somehow or another they've made the decision, they're moving on. We consider that a win-win. We'd like to actually get it down to the point where there were practically no appeals. Wishful thinking. We had 85 that we heard this year. And of those, 56 were upheld and 29 were lowered. Now, the net effect on the monies coming into the municipality of those reductions, and this is real property, was $1,712,070. Now, I make the distinction here between real property and personal property, because in the past we have had virtually no real appeals of personal property. And personal property is also on a different cycle, reporting cycle, than the real property. Personal property is self-reported. If you have personal property, business property that is, you report it to the assessor's office. They take that report and apply the value of the personal property. Now, if you're the owner of that property, you have the right to appeal it, just the same as your appeal of real property. This year, or the latest year, which is 2011, because the personal property is still going out, we had 16 appeals. 10 of those were subsequently withdrawn, like going to the front desk and talking to the staff and coming to an agreement. And of the 6 remaining, 3 were upheld, and 3 have been remanded back to the assessor's office for additional information. Now, you may wonder why I'm taking your time with such a small number. These are very big appeals. They are megadollars and extremely complicated. They involve inventory, specialized equipment, any number of unique characteristics. So they take longer. They take an awful lot more of our resources, both on the board and as a municipality. But they represent a large portion of the revenue to the municipality. In the future, I expect you will hear more statistics on the personal property, because as the assessor's office gets more sophisticated in their ability to audit these returns. There'll be disagreements. It was hard to disagree when they were self-reported. But overall, this year, our activities ran smoothly, in spite of the fact that we had less than our full 15 people. And as you know from last Friday, I have come to you in, in a work session to beg for your help in getting qualified people to serve on the Board of Equalization. I went through that some length in the work session, so I won't repeat myself here. But I would just like to take this opportunity to say that we're losing a lot of people. We will have, at the most, 4 truly experienced people out of 15. So they need good people to come on board and help them. I shouldn't put this so close to just saying that, but I'm one of the people, as you know, that it's leaving. I've served for 9 years and served as the chair, and I feel it's time for me to move on. And I feel that everything is in as good a order as you can ever get a movable process. For a long time I said, well, just as soon as I get this resolved, I'll quit. Just as soon as I get that resolved. Well, I finally realized there would always be something else. And I have been working with a member of the board, dragging her along to all of my meetings to try to get her as familiar as possible. Now, the chair is elected, but I will recommend to the board that they consider her as a replacement. If for no reason, she probably knows more about it than anybody else. Even if she'll just do it for a year, it'll help us in a transition. I'd also like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank everyone who served on the board, the staff of the assessor's office, who we have at times just about ran crazy with all the work they have to do, because they provide the administrative services to us. And you'd think, well, this one little board wouldn't need that much help. When we are meeting, they are cranking out hundreds of packets to be mailed out to the appellants, to the 3 people who are serving on the board, to the all the parties that are interested, or all parties who are a party to the action. It takes a lot of work. They have done a really wonderful job for us. They have also been cooperative with us, even when we were making their job harder. And you may wonder what I mean by that, but simply one of the things I considered most critical was getting in place the proper controls, policies and procedures, and segregation of responsibilities to avoid even the possibility of a conflict of interest. Since they are hired and work for the assessor, we wanted to be like Caesar's wife, no possibility of a problem. They put up with us, saying, no, you can't just run in there and say, I want this rescheduled because I want to go on vacation. Once it's put on the list, they can't have anything rescheduled without our permission. But that keeps the accusation of cherry picking from having any support. We think that's important. And I'm confident, Mr. Chair and members of the Assembly, that these controls will continue on. Even the people who were most opposed to them have sort of changed their thinking over time. I'm asking you and the administration to continue in an educational mode, to tell people about the taxing process, about their rights and their responsibilities. I have got a commitment from at least one person on the board to continue going out and meeting with groups. Myself and Ava Loken have met with literally every major real estate group in the city to try to educate their people on how to file an appeal. We want them to know how to do it because it makes our life easier. If they come in knowledgeable, things run a lot smoother. So thank you again for the opportunity of working with you, and I leave you in very good hands. Thank you.
We have some questions, Mrs. Burke. Mr. Honeman?
Ms. Burke, again, thank you very much. I know I mentioned for all your years to this community and citizens that you've been diligently serving, and as the chair, I know it's not an easy task, but I'll make one more last pleading before I ask another question. That is, I'm hoping that you'll stay in Anchorage. And I'm
yes, no one would get me to leave Alaska.
Good.
I love this place.
Second part of that is I'm hoping you're available for mentoring for new members as they come along, as they might need that training as you explained and described.
I have committed to be available for training and answer questions
That's
to the
more than
extent
generous,
I
and I
can.
appreciate that. And then my next question, and I'm not sure you're the person, could be Mr. McGee at the assessor's office. I noted, and you noted in your report, that about 80% were resolved at the assessor level without. I'm curious as to the figures of what you showed that after the hearing, the net effect. And I'm just curious if all of those 80% were reduced, and if so, how much, and how much that impacted our revenue base. Or do you know that number?
Through the chair, this information is not available to me right now, but if you'll recall when I was asked the question about the new CAMI system,
yes.
I told you that one of the things that we wanted was that kind of information. It has just been too voluminous to try to collect in the old system, which wasn't set up to collect that kind of information. I think it's vital, and I have a commitment. They said they'd do it. Hold them to it.
Will do. Thank you.
Mr. Birch.
I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you and the rest of the board for your good work and service, and you specifically for your tenure on the board, having served in a jurisdiction for a number of years where on an assembly that did hear all those appeals in Fairbanks. I can fully understand what you're offering and the contributions you're providing, not only to this assembly but the community. And I too offer and make the commitment to do what I can to secure other additional members for your group there in the Board of Equalization. It is a very vital role, and it's certainly a tribute to your good work and the rest of the board in building up that level of confidence that the public has in the assessment process that the municipality has gone through. I also was intrigued. I think one of my first actions on the assembly was to put in place an ordinance to where the public it had no cost involved as long as they showed up for the hearing, and I think there was some concern that would really ramp up the number of appeals, and I think to the contrary. I think the fact that people can appeal their assessment at any time at no cost is certainly an open door and transparent. But thank you very much for your good work.
Mr. Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ms. Burke. I'll just add my thanks to your many years of service. Much appreciated. I do want you to know your message did resonate with me. I went back to my office and cornered one of my staff members and said, you should look into this. And so we'll see if we get you another resume.
Right, everybody else.
Ms. Gray Jackson.
Thank you, Marianne. You will be missed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No one else in the queue. Mary Ann, thank you. It's not adequate. We shall be eternally grateful. Don't you forget that.
Thank you. And it's been a pleasure working with you, and thank you for your kindness and courtesy.
Thank you. This item is before us. Please vote. Mr. Trombley? Oh, did I? Okay, well. We now have before us item 9F1, AO number 93, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 27.2.
Waive reading.
Thank you. Ms. Johnston.
Second.
I brought it up again. I might have a conflict. This is my road service district, and I just wanted to mention that.
The appropriate response, Mr. Chairman, is tough to new lease.
Yeah, exactly. Hang in there.
Right.
Okay. Okay, we've got that one introduced. That completes our consent agenda. We are going to break for our dinner, and we'll be back shortly. We now have before us item 11A, AO number 2012-7S, an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code.
Waive reading.
We're frozen.
On the floor.
Okay, we're unfrozen.
What's the status of this one? Has it been moved? I know that. What have we
Yep.
done now?
We have before us an ordinance amending Anchorage Municipal Code, Section 21.08.060, and amending Anchorage Municipal Code of Regulations, Section 21.90.003, to authorize the appropriate municipal departments and officials to declare to clarify technical discrepancies. This item is before us.
Apparently, it's already been moved to approve on that. I moved that motion, and it was supported by the body. I'm going to do two things tonight. I'm going to try to move it again for a discussion. I'll have two arguments as it would make sense to move, and so I'll ask a few other questions of some staff, and hopefully you guys can help me with this. I'm not trying to make much ado about nothing. I think that the concept that staff has presented makes sense, that we need to align the functions specified in the reorganization that was approved. I'm fine with somebody having direct oversight on builder's warranty requirements and following through on just what the obligations are from what our building community does. I know we all need somebody to do that, and generally I don't have too many problems with the building official to do it. When it becomes, and back to the days of Howard Holton, you look at the needs of the public sector improvements to have clarity and sort of design uniformity and standards and overlap, and so I think that's a lot of why the municipal engineer had assumed some of these things. I have a couple specific questions. First to Ms. Ossiander. When you look at C2, which is on our, I guess this packet page isn't numbered, 224, our packet page 224, C section 2, section 1 references it a little bit empowering as it relates to Title 21 upcoming. Now, the road widths, we're going to see streetscape, we're going to see private roads, driveways, and parking areas oversighted now by the public building official, and requirements now to Title 21.85. Is there conflicting language here on all of that?
I don't believe so. I'd like to ask, I'm sorry. I don't believe so, but I'd like to ask Mr. Weaver to go forth and help me with this. Is there something specific you're looking at here, Mr. Starr?
Well, I guess when you look at the authority, when you look at the language prior to that, it was municipal engineer shall determine to what standards are required for improvements, and it sort of stops. And now we've sort of, I believe, spoken to areas that are more private development would also come to the planning department or the permit review folks under an engineer's statement from the person building the place saying this is what we want to do. And now it seems like we're going to turn the tables through this action and empowering language, in my opinion, that says, you know, the petitioner can say this is what we want to build, and the city official now can say, sorry, no, we're going to make the build it to these standards. So it seems very subjective, which is my first line of thinking. And also, I just want to make sure it's not conflictive with the rewrite.
I don't believe it is. I'd like, though, on both Mr. Thompson and Mr. Weaver to weigh in on the oversight of private projects.
Okay, let me just clarify one step, because Title 21.85 talks about that, but it also introduces the concept now of the design criteria manual being the consulting document, is the way as I read it. So now you've done it here. Does the upright, or the rewrite rather, speak to the design criteria manual in the same empowerment in the rewrite of Title 21?
We haven't yet hit a section that specifically references the design criteria manual. The intent would be the design criteria manual, as I understand it, and please weigh in, Mr. Weaver, is that the design criteria manual would provide the specific regulations to enforce the language in the code here.
So you in Title 21, the rewrite doesn't specify the design criteria manual as a publicly reviewed and policy-setting document then. And I'm not trying to over-dramatize that, but the design criteria manual now is written, and we don't adopt it. Planning and zoning doesn't adopt it, and we don't have any technical review outside of staff.
I'm going to clarify. What we've been talking about is the Title 21 User's Guide, and the design criteria manual is actually a little bit more in Mr. Thompson's bailiwick than in Title 21, but again.
Well, and against Ms. Ossiander, I didn't want to debate you, but it's in Mr. Thompson's arena now, and we're proposing through this action to take it out. So you started to move, we're technically going to move it to another department. And that's where I start to run into issues with that policy statement. So, I mean, this is sort of my argument for delay, is that is it not appropriate by this body to sort of deal with some of those issues on public use of the design criteria manual, public display of that. So I intend to bring Mr. Thompson up and ask him where he's at with that document in the use and the development of it and perhaps the rewrite. But we as a body need to provide sort of consistency to the community that looks to these departments, and I don't know that we're going to get it through language like this, especially when we're starting to see them dictate what the private roads will look like in the definition of a building official, how you're going to construct your driveway. This is where the blue board under your parking lot requirements are coming in. We're going to drive the cost of development up out of our control. And I'm not a control freak. I'm just saying we set policy in that regard. So it's not a movement yet to delay it yet, because I still want to flesh this out so that I know how long to delay it to. So, Mr. Thompson, can you come to the microphone? I had heard you were not at a meeting when we delayed it one time before, and I asked Sharon Walsh this question. The design criteria manual is in your purview now. There was some discussion or some email traffic that indicated you were rewriting it. Is that a project you're undertaking?
Mr. Starr, through the chair. Yeah, I had my first meeting today with Chapter 3, I believe. It was on landscaping. We're starting to assemble committees, very similar to what we used to do in the building codes, to where the committee comes together and we form the document prior to just forming it in-house and then asking for review. We're actually having public industry partake in the development and the changes of it. And it started today in the first section.
And I appreciate the updating or the process that you're trying to get that involvement, but the ongoing, the outreach years where you're no longer here perhaps, or wherever that goes, I'm talking 5, 10, 12 years from now, if the design criteria manual is now becoming the standard that we tell these folks, and quite frankly the cost of it, what you determine as a design criteria manual, you're going to say 2 inches of blue board over, plastic with such and such fill. That's your design. You're going to conflict quickly with engineers that bring you the plans to review. And I'm really cautious about that, because planning and zoning and we as a body should have input in the design criteria manual, I think. And we don't.
At the present time, no, you don't. The issue with design criteria is just that. It's just design criteria. It's not written in a code or regulation standard. It's just, if you do it this way, this is how you do it. If you do it this way, this is how you do it. There's a whole lot of criteria in there. It's the same all across the country. Everybody has a design criteria manual that they use as kind of a source for the engineers to go, and these are proven methods that work in the area based upon the weather, the freezing, the drainage, all of those issues. So, the flexibility of moving to different ways of constructing things during in between changes is a must in our business. I mean, things change overnight. I mean, for instance, the recycling community has asked me several times here recently, and we've made some changes this summer to allow things. So, it's really not my call on probably whether or not it's turned to a regulation or not, but I mean, I'm trying to implement a long-range plan, a guide for how we do this, a time frame that we do this, that mimics what I had done for many years on a different but the other one was a regulation, so I've seen it both ways.
The way I read this, and you can answer this, the way I read this is that if we make this action tonight and approve that, then the authority or the design criteria manual monitoring or the updating or whatever moves over then to quite frankly Sharon Walsh as the designated building official. Can somebody answer that? Who's the building official?
It's my understanding that's what this would do, yes.
Well, Jerry, we don't know. I mean, who's the designated building official by definition today?
Mr. Chairman, Starr, the design criteria manual will still stay within Public Works just as the mass standards. The building official would use those tools for the requirements of the improvement, and they're really tied. There are standards. They're in the regulation. They're tied to the subdivision standards. So the building official is not going to make these improvements, the width of the improvements at will, because they are tied to the subdivision standards. The construction is really left within the DCM and Public Works, and if someone requests a variance from the DCM, it would go to the municipal engineer.
Well, that's in Section 5, and that's farther down the road, and I can't point right to it, but that, to me, is sort of conflictive language, what you just said. It provides the authority, and Mr. Thompson's, interpretation was that it transfers over. So here's sort of the dialogue, and if the debate is there. So I'm concerned about that definition of how we're going to adopt the design criteria manual. Mr. Thompson, how much more time do you need to bring current the design criteria manual before we
Well, as it just started, and we're started with probably, I would say, the least technical sections of the time. It's going to, our goal is to try to get through it during the winter here, and I would say that in my history with code adoption and committee involvement, if we keep them on task, we can usually get through during that period of time. We've always done it with the big, thick volumes of the building code, and so to me, I think that over the course of the winter, we'll get through this. As I said, we just started today. Each of these groups is separate. Each committee has different volunteers already, and hopefully they'll meet every 2 weeks throughout the winter, and we can get to a final document. I can tell you, just past history is it's taken a long time. I mean, the last change was in 2007, and that had been taken about 10 years to do. So, I mean, there's a history of of not getting this done over time. So I'm trying to streamline that, have deadlines, set up committees, and get to a point where we can, that we can get both the industry and our staff together and find solutions that work for the city.
Well, I agree, because when those impasses occur, they're hard on the community, and when we don't have clarity. The next thing, Ms. Ossiander, which I'm not clear on, and this leads more into debate on why I wouldn't support this, and I'm not trying to do that. So it's new that, and I guess, Mr. Weaver, maybe it's just new because I read it new here, is that for developments outside, this is in Section 3 now on 225, and it reads, for developments outside the Anchorage Road Service Area, if the building official determines that any existing road or drainage plan is insufficient for that, then you can require alternate improvements. Where does our development community in the Subursa Road Service or some of the Upper Hillside Road Service areas, how do we interpret that now? Are we going to see new interface between the planning and permit review department that's different?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Starr, you're not going to see anything different at all. The private development section is reviewing all building permits that come under the Code of Regulations that have multiple structures on a parcel and require improvements along with the building permit.
I get that part, and I understand that it's when there's a problem in agreeing on what the development is going to be, where their engineers say we're going to do it this way, and somebody says, no, you better do it this way.
There's two different issues here. I believe you may be speaking to the degree of improvement.
Yes.
And
who determines it?
That the degree of improvement, the decision is made by the building official. It's appealable to the plating board, to the municipal manager, and then to court. So there are mechanisms to ensure that there's proper oversight with respect to what's happening. It's the way it's happening today. We're not changing the process. The present process uses Mass and the DCM, so we're not proposing to change that at all. The Mass and DCM stay with Public Works. It's just used as the construction method. So there's two kind of things, whether the type of improvement or the construction methodologies, I believe you're looking at.
Okay, and I'm glad you're sort of at the microphone. Why move it? First off, I guess what my understanding from your department in the uniformity, it would seem like it's adding more to your department, which is already, we've heard, sort of stressed budget-wise as well as manpower-wise. Why move it?
The logic in the reorganization was that private development section goes hand in hand with the building permits. The building official is responsible for the building permits. The building official would have better coordination of the degree of improvements at that process of one-stop processing. That it has worked fairly well. It was moved from PM&E to community development within the building safety side, development services for the building official. I believe it's working appropriately.
The language that speaks about the road guidelines, and I didn't ask this question offline on purpose because I want this body to recognize it. Now, and I've been on the body a while, I can read these things, but on 231, page 231, where it talks about private road design criteria. Now, is all that language being excluded or included? What did you guys do with the S version? Is that language coming out where it starts on line 43? It says design, and then it says there's a colon thing in front of there. Typically, to me, that means that language is coming out. but did you just insert that language?
Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, Mr. Starr, I'm working off just the ordinance itself, and I don't have the page numbering that you have. I have the page numbering of the ordinance.
Section F.
Section F.
Then.
Might help to let them know it's page 15 of the ordinance.
Yeah, right, 15 of the ordinance. Thanks, Patrick.
All that language is coming out.
All of
Yes.
all the next pages is coming out. So if that's true, and the developer comes to you tomorrow, this is sort of why my argument for delay is there, is if that's coming out, and the developer comes to you now, what standards are you going to enforce the private road stuff on if the DCM's not current?
Well, the DCM is current, and the DCM's only used for the construction method, the degree, the improvements, the fill, the type of fill, the height of the lift, and all those other things, whether insulation is required or not. The improvements that are required are tied to 2185, the subdivision standards, which are codified today. The only other standard that's not codified is that private road section that was in 2109.
And I guess that's my point on that. You've started to move it better than I did just now. If it's coming out, then what is it being replaced with? Because I can't follow that, and it's selfish, but in my area, in Miss Ossiander's, we're going to have a fair amount of private road development, and I don't want sidewalks on both sides and street lights and all the stuff that's in the design criteria manual. And that's my biggest fear, is that we're going to conflict with Title 21. A building official is going to have the authority. You're going to have the authority to change the DCM to your standards, and the public's going to be just held hostage for those decisions.
Mr. Starr, the standard does come out by the way the ordinance is written, that 26-foot road. That's what was required, and basically that for a total of 30 feet. Basically, when we had the issues with the site condos, 30 foot was a minimum to be able to provide adequate access into those areas. So, yes, it is coming out by the way it's written.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Weaver and Mr. Thompson. I would like to produce some caution here, and it's just only to bring the topics of development and the standards to be developed more in line with when we start to put the design. What do you call this other document that's going to pop up in our face?
Title 21 User's Guide.
The Title 21 User's Guide. Let the DCM manual, it's online, you can read it, and it's not current. I mean, I'm not going to challenge it. It's a usable document. You use it, but I think it does need to be updated. That would be helpful. It may also need to be territorial, district-wide. Our drainage standards are different. We're not oftentimes as supported as heavily as AWU. So until I can feel out, I'm just asking for the body's deliberation to delay it. Ms. Ossiander, in Chapter 8, when are we going to see that in some of our stuff here?
Well, we're working on parts in different times. For instance,
no, I guess the question is, when will this body see it? Not the committee, but this body see it to study it.
Define it.
Chapter 8. Isn't that's where it's coming out from? The reference is 28. The road standards, the manual you just said, user's guide.
The user's guide hasn't been written yet. The section on the private road standards that's coming out, I think, is part of the DCM. But Mr. Thompson maybe could answer better. And I thought when we talked about this some months ago, so my memory is not real good. I thought that it was taken out because it was covered elsewhere, and that was why it was deleted. So that's one of the questions. I'm a little bit challenged to answer, Mr. Starr.
I know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but how, if I can propose a date, which I intend to motion a delay, thanks for helping stay with me, guys. When would I be reasonable to move it to? So that
I have no idea, Mr. Starr. We are hoping to have we're hoping to have Title 21 done in October. But parts of it, for instance, the sidewalks on both sides is going to come up within 2 weeks in committee. We are never going to be talking about the specific language for how private road design that's in this deleted section. It is not included currently in Title 21.
But indulge me in the language that's proposed as it relates to the DCM and the public review of the DCM and the continual use of the DCM. How is that integrated in that? I haven't had a chance to research it. That's what I intended to do the last month or two since our last delay.
There has been nothing specific that I have read that states that the DCM's authority. I've been told that it's being reviewed. We've also had a general understanding, including a discussion with Mr. Wheeler, that regulations need to come before this body. And my understanding is that is the general intent.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Starr, the DCM's mentioned in Title 21 today in 2 or 3 different sections. It's referenced, the DCM. The DCM resides in Public Works, and in the new code in Chapter 8, it will reference the DCM again. It's not integrated into the Title 21. It references back to the Public Works area.
Okay, well, I haven't, and it's not that I don't believe you, it's just that I can't understand. And again, that's the argument why I would vote no, is I don't understand why you wouldn't have control of DCM, the public review of that, if it's your daily working document, and you say it's going to remain over there. I'm just not sure that's good policy either. If you got it and it's yours and you're using it to enforce against, then keep it current and all the burdens that go with the staff defense of it. So what I'd just like to do, I'll throw out a motion if I can get a second. November 13th is going to be busy, Mr. Chairman. Is that budget night?
That will be budget night.
Well, move it to November 27th. I'd move to postpone the action on this till November 27th.
Second. I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Trombley. I have in the queue to speak Ms. Ossiander.
It's on the main motion, not on the motion that just occurred.
Yeah,
May I still speak? No.
No, let's address the motion to delay. Mr. Horniman?
Just in support of the motion to postpone, I'm concerned about, as Mr. Starr talked about, even regionalizing or something, because I'm concerned about the site condo. If this language is coming out, private roads for site condos, we've got a couple in our neighborhoods, and it's abysmal. So I'm concerned about that.
Ms. Johnston?
I have a question of Mr. Starr. Because we are rolling into budget season, and this has been postponed a number of times, and I understand some of your concerns, but some of it you've also said that you haven't had the opportunity to research some of the questions you've had. If you were able to research, and if you were able to meet with staff and even meet with the Title 21 committee if that's necessary, could you actually postpone it more to October 9th before we get into the budget series? Just because I just feel that we have been kicking this down the road a number of times.
Well, it isn't kicking it down on purpose to just sort of be bureaucratic here. What I had hoped is we would be farther along in Title 21 itself, and that information that I needed would be easier. Landscaping. You have a whole host of it in there. Now it's more defined through clarity language in this action tonight that department, building official, has authority over that more clearly. Where in years past, perhaps the practice was, here's my landscaping plan tendered by an engineer of record, and away you went. I guess to answer your question is I can do the research on it, but Title 21 is where the meat of it's at for me. And so you have those standards. You have this rewrite of the DCM and the interface there with that, and then what's fair to the industry. I'm not so sure that time is of the essence to get somebody's doing the work now. We also have those budget challenges that come up over if they're going to take it on. Does it mean more money? Does it mean different staff? Does it mean a lot of other things, which is appropriate to the budget? So I'd almost want to do it during the budget to say, are you adequately staffed? You know, we hear about sometimes delays. We hear about staffing challenges. Let's address all of it. So, you know, in support of your question, I think it's not intentional to delay it. It's that trying to reach out to the information to do it isn't negligence on my part. I think you guys are doing committee work in progress that affects this, as I see the definition of duties, and not even to mention how we're going to implement Title 21. So that's all.
Ms. Ossiander?
I'm confounded because I don't know how to answer Mr. Starr. And I'm trying to speak to why I couldn't answer you before and why I don't think that passing Title 21 is going to thoroughly answer your questions either. We are going to be talking about landscaping. We're going to simplify it and I think make it better. We're going to be talking about sidewalks, but we're not going to be talking about the specifics about the blue insulation under parking lots. That's beyond the scope. I think, as I've tried to follow you, I think the main concern has been the authority of the DCM over private projects, which is beyond the scope of anything we've discussed. The reason I like this, Mr. Starr, was because it brought a lot clearer and closer nexus than existed before on what off-site development and projects how they had to be linked to the current project. It also includes a clearly defined appeal process if anybody feels the city went too far. To me, that's the heart of this, and I think it's good. I want to be able to answer your questions. I just don't think that we're going to be able to do it thoroughly as we go forward in Title 21. And so that's why I was hoping, I walked over the mayor and I was asking if there could be some clarification on the authority of the DCM, particularly in regard to private projects. There's a sense among some people that we've been very overreaching in the DCM, that we've caused private developers to incur costs that are exorbitant and beyond what another private engineer might call. So I don't have a way to answer that, and I don't think Title 21 is going to answer it. So what I need, Mr. Mayor, is some way to answer Mr. Starr's question in a way that we can see a path.
Sure. I'm in the queue, Mr. Chairman. If
Yes, Mayor Sullivan.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. I think what I tried to do early on and working with community development on language that specified that if the building official was going to require off-site improvements, that there be some demonstrable benefit to the developer. And as you can see in section C3, page 9 of 18, we've really beefed up that language so that it's very specific that there has to be requirements that these improvements are indeed a benefit to the development, and the required steps to appeal that, of course, as you illustrated, are contained within as well. So I think that's good language. When I first had our little building summit some months ago, some of the participants, one of their main concerns about the design criteria manual was just exactly what Mr. Thompson had mentioned in his process, was that they wanted to be involved in the creation of it rather than reacting to it once it was already done in-house and then presented. And so the process that Ron's initiated there is exactly what they've asked for, and so I think it satisfies that requirement. So, I can't answer, probably more technically, except to say that I think this really makes, as you said, Ms. Ossiander, I think it's a good change, and Mr. Weaver and Mr. Thompson can answer, the more technical aspects of it, but this moves us forward in I think, a positive manner, and we would oppose postponing it because, as you mentioned, it's been postponed to this point, and I think it accomplishes what we tried to accomplish.
Does this in any way increase the ability of the city to put standards on private development?
I'll let Jerry answer that.
They control the DCM, Debbie.
Well, yes, but we are going to see the DCM at some point? I guess that's another question for the mayor before the other question.
Well, as Mr. Starr mentioned, it's online, of course, but I don't think you'll see it as you do with the building codes where you're actually approving a law. This is an internal manual, which typically doesn't come to a legislative body for approval.
Okay. Well, Mr. Starr, I really am trying here.
Kind of an atypical debate because we've got a circular meeting, but I think it's productive to talk this way because it's impactive on the building community and the development, most likely of ours. If we can't answer the question on who's going to say the final word on private road development out in our area and what our roads are going to look like, we as elected officials can't respond to our community. If we can't weigh in on the DCM, then we don't have a way to impact their policy enforcement. And I concur with the mayor that it's prudent to be informative, but by the same token is why would you empower one agency to rewrite the document and the other one to enforce the use? They're both engineers, they're both qualified, and they're going to get better feedback from industry. So if this is his job to rewrite the DCM, why wouldn't you give it to the Planning and Community Development Department to rewrite and make current? They got to use it.
Okay, so would you be more comfortable if it just said municipal engineer instead of building official?
No, because they're two different people here. That's the municipal engineer over there, and this is the building official.
I know, but I thought you were more comfortable with it being with the building engineer.
The enforcement of the document, but my point on this is if you guys want to go down the road of fully empowering today, and I'm just, the matter in front of us is a delay to be more coordinated with the regulations that are going to also affect this community in Title 21. Whether they imply or not, what we're going to see is a pecking order in a clearer way that it's enforced, not only for subdivision agreements, but private roads and the other stuff. And so it's not deliberately obstruction. Let's just be fair to the community that has to use this stuff, and that's all I'm trying to do. If it's not approved for delay, then let's get at it and decide if it's right. I will say the chairman asked me to produce some language that clarifies how the DCM is written and who enforces it and the public review process. I can't really do that in short order, especially with the mayor saying, why would you get in the weeds at that level? Well, because it costs a lot of money. That's why. And when you don't get to change it through public hearing.
Mr. Chairman.
That's all. Well, I don't care where it goes, Mr. Chairman. If you want to call the question on.
Yeah, I would, because I think that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that what's happening right now is a debate between two of my colleagues, and I think that that's inappropriate, so call the question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Okay, we've been called for the question on the delay or postponement till November the 27th. Please vote. Mr. Trombley? That motion carries 6-5. We now have before us item 13A, an ordinance amending AO number 69, an ordinance amending the zoning map and approving the rezoning. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Second. Seeing no one in the queue, please vote. Mr. Trombley?
No, make that a yes, sorry.
You want to take back?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, that's fine. That motion, let's see, Mr. Drummond?
Pardon me, Mr. Chair?
13A. We need your vote. If you did, it didn't record. Please re-vote on 13A. Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 13B, AO number 34, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to adopt. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone wish to testify? Anyone at all?
Good evening. My name is Mike Kenny, Kenny. I'm appearing tonight to encourage the passage of this ordinance. It's long overdue. I've been taking part in the Planning and Zoning Commission work sessions, mainly to learn what Title 21 and the effect on Anchorage 2020. I didn't get involved in that. And now the Assembly sessions. There's a process. The process was followed. It took a long time to follow it. You followed the process. You provisionally approved these. And it just, I'm not passing myself off as any expert on 2021 or 2020, but the process, the integrity of this process, having 4 or 5 Assembly people who you can barely hear and barely make themselves known, overturning years of a process, years of the public saying this is what we want our community to be like in the future. And then you provisionally approved, or your predecessors, as the case may be, provisionally approve it. And then to see the planning and zoning take it apart. They didn't even want to use the provisionally adopted Assembly 21. They used the consultants. They place more value in that. So it's taken a lot of time. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more effort the longer we put this off. So I believe that the time is tonight to pass this. And then if there are gaping holes where the public missed or there's been a change in circumstances after November, you'll still have plenty of time. There's provisions in 2020. There's provisions to change it. I ask you not to endorse a process that does not have any integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no questions. Anyone else? Anyone else at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us. Ms. Drummond?
Mr. Chair, I don't think you didn't close the public hearing, right?
No,
Okay.
we did not.
Yes. In that case, I move to continue the public hearing to November 27th. Second.
Any objection? Mr. Trombley?
No.
Okay, hearing none, that is unanimously carried over to November the 27th. We now have before us item 14A, AO number 88, an ordinance of the Anchorage Municipal Assembly to repeal Anchorage Municipal Code section 8.75.1AO and delete 8.75.180 from the fine schedule under AMC 14.60.03. Thank you. This item is now before us. Please be reminded that this is going to be carried over, postponed to the next meeting. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
Mark Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N is the last name. I would like to say we need to keep this. Have we started or not?
No, you're fine.
Okay. We need to keep this ordinance in place the way it is right now, but we need to actually strengthen this ordinance. We need to have it all over town, including 12th and Muldoon. Okay, because we have a problem panhandler situation over there, and I'm getting sick and tired of seeing these people. So we need to strengthen it, make it all over town, and, and start ticketing these people under Municipal Code 24.080.015. And start doing that. Start enforcing this ordinance.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us. We will continue public testimony. Mr. Trainee?
Just move to continue the hearing to the 25th of September, Mr. Chairman.
Any objection?
Second.
Mr. Trombley?
No objection.
Okay. This will be carried over to our next meeting.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we do have a work session on it this Friday, sir.
Yes, there will be a work session on it this Friday at 11 o'clock. Yes, 11 o'clock on Friday. We now have before us item number 14B, AO number 92, an ordinance of the municipality of Anchorage, Alaska, authorizing the borrowing and accepting from the state of Alaska Clean Water Fund an aggregate amount not to exceed $5 million. For the reading. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all?
Hello, my name is Jason Agri. I'm a citizen of Anchorage. I'd like to testify about the clean water thing, since we're talking about clean water. I know we had a public safety meeting on fluoridation a number of months ago, and I wonder if there was minutes kept of this meeting, and all the information, is there a compendium made of that, or do you guys get that together?
Yeah, there will be.
And when will that be available for review for the rest of the body here?
We'll hope to have that well before the end of the year. We're hoping to have it done before Ms. Engel left, but we'll have a continuation and a recommendation to the body before the end of the year.
Okay, so there's going to be another public safety meeting then? Okay, well that sounds good. Will I be able to ask questions at that meeting?
We may have some allowance for that sort of thing, yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. I don't exactly know what the strings attached are of this $5 million on this motion upcoming, so maybe if there's any information about that, I'd like to hear that.
The document is available out front.
Okay.
Okay.
Is it on the schedule? You mean on the calendar for today?
No, sir. This document is available out front for you if you'd like to have a copy.
Yeah, okay. I'll go ahead and get a copy of that. All right, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us.
Move to approve.
Seeing no discussion, please vote. Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
Okay. Would you vote, please, Ms. Ossiander? That motion carries unanimously. Yes.
I have been urged to reconsider the vote on that we debated at some length because there was no actual vote on the call to question.
It's true.
So I'm going to make a motion to reconsider since I was on the prevailing side, and frankly, I'll urge a no vote, but process was not followed.
Okay.
Pardon?
No, when you call the question, you have to have a vote on calling the question, and then you can vote on the issue, and that wasn't done this time.
And Mr. Chairman, it has to pass by 2/3 too, so.
Okay. Then what I will do is go ahead and re-vote on call the question.
For motions to reconsider.
She asked for reconsideration. So we'll vote on the motion for reconsideration first. Please vote.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Mr. Wheeler?
You've covered it. You're going to reconsider, then you'll vote on the question, and then you're back on the main item.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. We are voting on the motion to reconsider. Please vote. Mr. Trombley?
No.
That That motion fails,
So the people who voted
or that,
against it
yeah,
to reconsider.
no vote is 6 to 5. So we do have no motion to reconsider.
I know.
Okay, am I current where I need to be, Mr. Wheeler?
Mr. Chairman, I would have preferred the reconsideration and then deal with the question, but I think what we'd have to do is treat this as a knowing waiver of your procedural rules. So you've chosen not to reconsider your failure to follow the rule with respect to calling the question. So I would treat that as a knowing waiver of the requirement of two-thirds vote. If that's what you're intended, that's where you are now. So the main motion has passed, given your apparent knowing waiver of the requirements for calling the question.
Knowing waiver, huh?
In other words, goofed up, there's nothing to do about it, so keep on going.
Just keep on going.
So when the main motion, what's the main motion? The motion to delay or the motion to pass?
Delay.
Fine, thank you.
Item 14C, AR number 202, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating a $1,027,090.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before us.
Move to approve.
Okay, Mr. Starr?
Who's representing DHSS for a question? Mr. Michaelis? Oh,
Acting Director Weitmeier.
I'm sorry?
They're in the audience.
Through the chair, Janet Bittmer, Acting Director, Department of Health.
You are, and I apologize for not picking you out there. I'm not here to be offensive on your first time up to the meeting here, but do we support prophylactics through this grant?
That was a question you didn't expect.
I'm not sure the answer to that. Just a moment. Brittany Matero, subject matter expert of
I just want
public
to know
health.
what money's being spent on, and then the next thing is, do we provide guidance on abortions in consult with this money through your department?
Okay. Matero, M-A-T-E-R-O. I'm the Public Health Division Manager at Health and Human Services. Through the chair, we do not provide guidance on abortions at the Reproductive Health Clinic. We do provide, if asked about services, we do have a flyer that does have all of the clinic options, as we provide a flyer for all of the clinics providing OBGYN services and other services in Anchorage. But we don't counsel on it. We don't do referrals. We don't make calls for our clients. And then what the money is spent for on supplies is we provide contraceptives, STI treatment, general equipment such as needles, cotton balls, etc.
And then how about the morning after pill? I don't know what the letter designation is.
Sure. Under this grant, we do purchase emergency contraceptives. We purchase Plan B for our clinic.
With this money?
Correct.
Okay, do we use tax dollars for any of the other items of the supplies that you talked about?
We do purchase contraceptives from time to time. We have not purchased emergency contraceptives, but we do normal birth control.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate your candor.
Of course.
There is no one else in the queue. Please vote. Mr. Trombley?
No.
That motion carries 9-2. We now have before us 14D, AR number 203, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $534,000.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr.
I hate to be the chatty Cathy, but Mr. Vacalis, how is our water systems protected? This references bioterrorism or something like that, which is the inference that it's sort of a, something into our systems of public use.
Bioterrorism could mean water, it could mean air, it could mean sprinkled on food. So there's all kinds of different mechanisms in which to induce the bioterrorism agent. These particular programs that basically come under the auspices of Homeland Security are ways to counteract that. A lot of it's education, a lot of it's detection, some of it also is stockpiling of different type of materials and/or chemicals.
Well, and I've approved a number of these over my years here, and it's never been one that specified sort of fencing our improved fencing or security systems or monitoring of our public utilities. I've never seen money go that direction for these grants. Do we do that? I mean, I look at some of them, they're fairly secure, but most of them are just a padlock. And I'm wondering if are we needing to visit something and be more proactive? Because the grant appropriations, I think, should be, in my opinion, a little bit more directive. But you run the city, so you sort of answered my question in that where does the money come from, sort of that water tower protection and some of the public facility protection?
And it can be used for that. The utility, the water utility, of course, does in fact safeguard their sources as best they can once we have control of it. For example, in the tanks, also in the reservoirs, that type of thing. But of course, the lakes, the glaciers, and things like that, that's a little different story, although we do test. As you know, we have a very active testing program in the labs that basically support the water utility.
Well, I just look at it, I mean, we'd get very thirsty fast if a Clutha reservoir was contaminated, that's all. So I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
No one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Trombley?
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. We now have before us item 14E, AR number 204, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $68,719. Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing, hearing none, this item is before the body.
Move to approve.
Mr. Starr.
This just sort of brings me back to the IM discussions and our air quality programs, and I'm wondering, is this money just not better spent on different types of systems? There's not a darn thing we can do about benzene in our air. Granted, it's nice to know where it is, but the program, and I guess if it's DHSS again, is this the one that's going to go into people's garages and monitor their inboard levels? Because, the packet speaks to it generally, but we saw it at the IM program, and we saw benzene levels being out of our control to control, and how much they put in, the sources of it. It's in a lot of items that are used every day, and $70,000 to kind of check into the problem is a lot of money. I'm thinking we could use it elsewhere.
Well, through the chair, this is a different grant. This is basically for public awareness. It includes Bike to Work, plug-in at 20.
It says to me the appropriation will provide funding to perform air monitoring of benzene, polymetric hydrocarbons, and toxic air pollutants for a year.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. I moved on to 14E. I thought you were talking about 14E.
I am. On page 2, the letter from the mayor speaks to the appropriation use.
No. No, benzene isn't included under 14E.
Pardon?
Benzene isn't included in the grant under 14E.
Well, I'm not here to confuse you, but it says it right in the title.
It says it on the back page, too.
Yep. Our 14E is not that 14E. I have a different one also. I have the one Mr. Starr has. It's for $68,719.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you read the one on the board, the 14 on the board, it's a very different one.
Yeah.
And that's what.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Okay. Well, maybe we just postpone action. Does the grant have to be accepted today?
What's wrong with our agenda?
Yeah. The clerk has asked for a moment at ease. What we've got. Oh, it doesn't work at all. We've got a different document in here.
Yeah, should we pull it and make new copies?
But it's really supposed to be that.
Okay. We're going to take a moment at ease so we get the correct document in the booklet. We are going to get documents put in order to not delay. The body needs to understand 14E that's on the projector up there is what is supposed to be in here, not the document that we've got.
Point of order. This was never given to us. I don't think we can deal with it tonight.
Okay, well, let's delay it. Mr. Starr? Ms. Drummond, do you have a comment?
No, Mr. Chair, I'm as confused as the rest of us.
Okay.
Well,
Mr. Trainee?
don't we have to introduce it by correct title?
Yeah,
It's the world's going to end. Let's just move it to the 25th.
Right. Okay, we got a motion to move it to the 25th.
Mr. Hall, I believe we need to introduce it. It's not on the agenda that way. I'm sorry, Ms. Gray Jackson, I can't hear you.
It was introduced at the
Chairman?
last meeting.
Yeah, it had to be introduced at our last meeting. Yeah. Mr. Chairman.
The 25th?
Yes.
25th,
Thank you, Mr.
sir.
Chairman. If it was introduced at our last meeting, and based on the agenda, it looks like that's what happened, so it's already been introduced, okay? So we just postpone that until the next meeting when we have the correct document. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. And we have a motion to postpone. I do not have a second.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Any objection?
No.
Mr. Trombley? Very good. We will carry that postponed to the next meeting. We have before us item 14F, AR number 205, a resolution of the municipality of Anchorage appropriating $1,149,000.
Waive reading.
Thank you. This item is before us for public testimony. Anyone to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing none, this item is before us.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Honeman?
Yeah, I just, it's great to have the monies to help secure our facilities and such, and I'm particularly excited the fact that we're using technology with the camera systems. I think that's a very good appropriation of the funding and use of the money.
Thank you. No one else in the queue, please vote. Mr. Trombley? That motion carries unanimously. We are now at that point on our agenda. No special orders, no unfinished agenda. Audience participation.
Mr. Hall, I have a point of information.
Yes,
If I could.
Ms. Ossiander.
So did we also postpone the AR 204 that was in our packet, or did we just postpone the one that was on the agenda?
The one that was on the agenda.
So the one that's in our packet just dies? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Debbie, I don't think the one that we had in our packet was ever introduced. Because if you take a look at today's agenda, it's got the one for the $216,000. The one that was up there is the one that's in our agenda.
Okay.
I don't think the other one was ever introduced.
I'm just striving for clarity, Mr.
I know, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone under audience participation? Anyone at all?
Hi, my name is Clara Armory Goldsmith.
Could you spell that, please?
ClaireAnneGoldsmith.
Thank you.
I am a part owner in AKE Cab LLC, and I'm here today because we asked for clarification on an ordinance at the last meeting, and we were promised a clarification, and we still have not yet received it, referring to the movement of our cars through town. Currently, we were told that we would are being barred from driving our vehicles empty without passengers through the Anchorage municipality, and are being ticketed, harassed by the police. We've been pulled over over 40 times since we asked for this clarification. I would like to have an answer tonight, possible. Our company provides excellent service to the base, and we have not been picking up in Anchorage. We would still continue to like a company permit. We would like to buy and run our own cars and hire our own drivers, and the current ordinance does not provide for such a permit. I would also like to say that we do not appreciate being harassed and having our property seized illegally by the police, and we're not going away, and we're here to stay. Thank you.
We have a couple of questions for you. Mr. Trainee. Oh, you were in the queue. Mr. Honeman.
I'm sorry. After the last meeting, my understanding is, do you have legal action in your business against the municipality?
Not currently.
Have you had communications with our transportation department inspector or the municipal attorney who represents the municipality, reference your status?
I don't believe we have.
There's nothing in writing that's been delivered to you about
No.
the framework of how you should or should not operate within the municipality as an entity or a business?
Not pertaining to this question about the ordinance or traveling through the municipality.
I thought, Mr. Wheeler, that I understood you were waiting, or maybe perhaps you had some issue with a legal review or some notice to be given to the owners of the company, the administration. Okay. Reference the E-cab issue after the last meeting. It was my understanding that there was I thought there was going to be some sort of a written document as to explaining the parameters of how this business was to operate or not to operate in the municipal boundaries outside of their contract with the bases. I thought there was some document listed either through your office or through the transportation inspector. Is that not true? Did I misunderstand, I think?
No, I think that is correct. If I remember correctly, there was some request for information from the Assembly. I thought that I had sent that information by email to the Assembly.
Right.
There was an Assembly request for information.
Okay. Is that something that is not under confidential stamp or seal that perhaps the question came to this body by the member of the public, and I believe that there was some explanation that was going to be, I guess, vetted that through your office to explain this municipality's position?
My recollection is I was asked to give you this body information. I would have to go back and look at it to see if there was confidential information in it.
I guess to the point, is there, can these folks expect some document explaining the rules that they must operate or that they cannot do? I know that it's very clear under the Transportation Code how to operate a business under the current code in the municipality, but apparently there's some quandary about Elmendorf, J-Bear, and what they can and can't do. Much like if a cab operated in the valley and came into Anchorage on the way to the airport or something.
Through the Chair, Mr. Honeman, it's my understanding, and this is secondhand, but it's my understanding that there have been many conversations between the Transportation Inspector and Ms. Patrick regarding what you can and can't do under municipal code. There's, I think, a difference of opinion on how that should work, but I think there has been communication. That said, she is free to work with the Transportation Inspector on those issues, and we will consult with the TI as he may require us or ask us to help.
I'm sorry. She hates me right now. We actually, we're not getting clear information from the Transportation Inspection. That's why we're here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Okay. The Transportation Inspector repeatedly gives us you're operating a taxi cab illegally in the municipality. Well, yes, Mr. Musser, but is it illegal for us to travel from a federal military installation to a state installation? Ms. Patrick, you're illegally operating a taxi cab within the municipality. That is the city's position. So what we're asking is, because according to the city, we're allowed to operate on the base. That's what we've heard from people. We can operate on the base according to the base, and that's okay. And we give the base exemplary service. But when I have a customer that calls me from the North Star Inn and they want to go from the base to the airport, I'm no longer able to transport them from a federal installation to a state installation because the municipality is essentially telling me that they have exclusive rights over the roads. And that's fine if that's the case, but we need to know so that we can operate within the confines of the law, because we've actually, before anybody had even said anything about this, have received citations for going from the base to the airport, not to the municipality.
My understanding, and I'm not an attorney, and Mr. Wheeler, please chime in if necessary, but my understanding in following the law, Ms. Patrick, I don't know what the answer is you're looking for. If you just don't like the answer you're getting from transportation?
No, it's not that we don't like the answer we're getting. It's that we don't understand the answer we're getting.
Okay. My understanding, and again, Mr. Wheeler, I'm not the transportation inspector, but if I follow the code in my past life, is that the municipal road system is encompassed in the municipality, of which my understanding is the base actually has, if it has a public access to that roadway, then the rules of the law in the municipality apply there as well.
Right. Well, and the Glen Highway, does also.
Sure.
But my explained example is this: I had a police officer actually pull me over the other day.
Hold on. You have pending litigation before the police?
No, I don't.
Right.
No, I actually had a police officer pull me over the other day and show me the locate that was placed on my vehicles.
Okay. So my point is, you have to follow the laws of the Transportation Code in the municipality of Anchorage when you are in the municipality of Anchorage.
Right, but does that not also apply to cabs outside the municipality other than mine?
Well, that's what we're actually asking is, do you guys consider the base to be part of the municipality? Because if we're able to legally operate on base and we have licensing to operate on base, then when we come off the base, we're coming from outside the municipality. So if I might, Mr. Wheeler, again, a cab from Palmer, Talkeeton, I know they have a cab service, Wasilla. If they drop a fare off in Anchorage, are they operating under municipal code for the title for transportation? Are they legally allowed to operate in the municipality, dropping off a fare from their location to the city?
Through the chair, Mr. Honeman, I'm not the resident expert in the department on Title 11. Mr. Gates he's been working this issue quite extensively, but my recollection is that if you are operating within the municipality, no matter where you come from, you need to have a municipal license. So it doesn't matter if you're coming from the valley. In addition, we have concurrent jurisdiction with the state and the feds, so we have the authority to regulate taxi service on base and on state installations.
Okay. Ms. Patrick, this seems like a big quandary. I understand this is something that you're trying to establish a new business and you've got clients. This is going to be well beyond something we can settle, in my opinion, here tonight. It may need code change, it may not, but in any event, I think you heard it pretty clearly. If you're operating a cab in the municipality of Anchorage under current
So we
law,
are not able, Mr. Wheeler, to operate on base?
Excuse me, I'm going to interject myself here. We're not going to clear this away. I do have one other assembly member in the queue, Ms. Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's kind of interesting that if we allow the folks who live on base to vote in our elections, but their roads don't count, there's a lot of legal issues that this question has raised, and I'm really glad you came and asked us about it. Keep at it, and it will eventually be settled.
And could you please give us your name and spelling for the record?
It's Megan Patrick, and it's MEGANPATRICK. We don't want to create problems for you, Mr. Mayor. Really, we just want to operate our business within the confines of the law.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing, hearing none, public appearance is closed. Any assembly comments? Oh, okay.
When I get in before he was asking 11 o'clock. My name's Andrew Klein. I live down on 9th and E. Been here in Alaska about 49 years. I've checked with the sewage treatment plant out there at Point Warrenzoff, and I know they deal with the solids, but they said they don't deal with the liquids. And the green algae that's building up along the mud flats out there has grown itself all the way down to the Turnagain Arm now. And years ago, I never saw this algae, and Fish and Game fellow named Dave Harkness informed me that that's algae that's trying to fight the pollution of urea or gray water, whatever you want to call it, going into the inlet. Now, I'm just putting it before the assembly. Have they done any kind of research of processing the gray water so that we can keep our Cook Inlet free from pollution?
I don't know the answer to that, but if you will get with me immediately following the meeting, give me your contact information, I'll get it answered and get the information to you.
Get with you after this meeting?
Yes, immediately after this meeting. And we're wrapping up here in just a second.
Okay.
Okay?
And then my other deal, just a short one, is I ride my bike a lot. I'm 74 years old. And coastal trails are a wonderful thing, but we've got these people that don't seem to think about other people being on the trail. I usually whistle or I let people know I'm coming, but there's a lot of people that don't seem to take that into consideration, and they come zooming by, and it's amazing somebody hadn't been really hurt. And I used to work for the paint and sign shop, and I know they could make a sign, maybe put it at the head of these bike trails saying, be considerate.
Okay.
Speak out or something, ring your bell. Anyway, those are the only 2 points I have. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Trombley? 11A was postponed until November 27th. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We stand adjourned.
She doesn't like the answer. She needs to follow the law. I know it's frustrating.